guys, and welcome back to today's tutorial. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to retouch eye makeup. And I say eye makeup specifically because this tutorial will be geared towards that in particular today. I will be leaving some other parts out, like how to retouch eyelashes and eyebrows, and also how to retouch lips, because I think they all deserve their own videos and they are a little bit more in depth. So today I just want to focus on eye makeup in particular, and it's a really big part of beauty photography and beauty retouching to know how to do this and to retouch makeup in particular. So usually when we retouch makeup, I always like to make sure that I'm living to a bit of a rule in my own opinion. And the rule is to not go overboard and to not completely change what the makeup artist has done. Because at the end of the day, if you're working with a makeup artist, you want their work to be shown through fairly accurately of how it looks on camera. There's always going to be those little parts of the makeup that do need to be tweaked, and as you can see in this particular image, there are parts that we do need to retouch. And it's not necessarily because when you're looking at it in person it looks bad or the makeup artist has done a poor job. That's usually not ever the case. Most times certain colors don't show through very well on camera. Certain consistencies of makeup don't always show through perfectly on camera. Unfortunately, the camera does capture a lot of flaws when it comes to makeup, and particularly with color matching, that's always a bit of an issue with particular colors. Also with consistency of blending. Now sometimes, unfortunately, the makeup artist can do as much as possible on the day and still there'll need to be that level of retouching involved. So I'm going to go through today the basic ways of how I like to start retouching makeup. But first of all, before we start the tutorial, I'd really like to thank MusicBed for providing the music for this video. I do have an affiliate link in the description box below. You can click on it and start your 30-day trial if you'd like to try it out. If you'd like to sign up for the subscription model, they do have plans that start from $9. So any subscription that is purchased through this channel will actually go back to supporting this channel and helping me continue to make videos for it. Just before we start as well, I just want to let you guys know you might hear a bit of traffic in the background. I'm sorry, I'm going to try and cover this a little bit with music, but I am doing this tutorial in a room that is closer to the main road, and you might hear a bit of traffic. So, but other than that, we're going to get straight into the tutorial now. So the first thing I like to do with retouching makeup is split the makeup retouching into about 3 categories. And they're categories that I like to focus on with how I retouch the makeup. So the first category I'm going to talk about is lighting. So obviously if the lighting's not 100% looking even across the makeup, we want to fix that. We want to make sure that the lighting is accurate and looks nice and even. And this can particularly come with the texture on the model's skin, and with texture, makeup artists can't do anything for that, unfortunately. So texture is the main issue I think a lot of the time that does show through with eye makeup, and this is very apparent in the lighting. We'll go in and fix that with a method that I particularly like to use. The second category I'm going to talk about is color. So obviously we want to make sure that the color is right, the color of the makeup's not showing through as a color that's different in person. And also if the color's not even across the lid, then we want to make sure that we're retouching that. And then the third category is actually texture itself. So obviously there is the type of texture that we don't want, that is uneven, and we want to even that out with lighting usually, or color if it comes to that. But usually with the texture that we do want to keep, that is quite important, and that's why I've made it a third category in this case. We want to make sure that there is enough texture in the makeup so it doesn't look too smooth or too doll-like or smudged. We don't want that at all. We want to keep and retain that texture too. So there's going to be 3 different methods of how I'm going to show you how to retouch in these categories, and I usually like to start off with lighting and making sure that we've got that even base initially. So to start off with, we're going to zoom right in to this eye makeup, and it's kind of like a glossy lid, so we do want to keep that glossy effect. We don't want to go too hard with the texture in this particular case, but we do want to keep a little bit of texture because this area in particular here could get quite smudged looking if we over retouch this area too much. So first off, I'm going to start with dodge and burn. So if you guys haven't seen my dodge and burn tutorials, I've done a few in the last week or so. So I'm going to link them down in the description box below, and you can go and check those out if you haven't already. I'm just going to go through briefly what I would usually do in a dodge and burn situation. So we want to duplicate the background layer first and drag that layer into the new layer box. So now we've got our background copy layer. We can use this layer for the healing tools in particular. Now we're going to bring up a couple of adjustment layers. So we click on the adjustment layer button and then we go up to curves. And the first curves layer that we're going to create is the dodge layer. So we're going to bring this line quite up so the image is looking very bright. About there, and then hold down Control and I on the keyboard so it inverts that mask right here. So this way we can paint onto the image with light, and that's what we're going to do with the dodging and burning. So I'm going to rename this layer Dodge so it's not too confusing for you guys. And we're going to go back to the adjustment layer button and go up to curves again. And this time we're creating the burn layer, so we want to move the line down so the image gets darker. And holding down Control I again on the keyboard, that will invert the layer. And then this one we are going to rename to burn. Okay, so first off we're going to start, I think this time with the burn layer, because as you can see here, we want this color to be quite deep and rich over in this section like it is in this section over here. So we want to make sure that that's kind of looking a little bit more even. So we're going to start to burn some of these little light patches here. So we're going to make sure we're on the burn layer. I'm going to get a paintbrush, have it fairly soft, and I think at this stage 35 is fine. We want to make sure that the flow is quite low, probably at about 1%. And then we're going to deepen in that color a little bit and the light a little bit. So the problem with dodge and burn on sometimes this kind of makeup, or lots of different types of makeup, is the fact that you won't necessarily get this color over in this section. You're just changing basically how bright it is and how dark it is. So that's where the color category comes into it, and that's where I'm going to show you another method that we're going to make sure everything matches in color wise and it still doesn't look too patchy. So we're just going to fill in all these little gaps here with the burn tool, make sure it's quite even, any little light parts here. And as you can see, the line's not very defined here, which we don't necessarily want this line to be defined, but I'm just going to burn it so it sort of feathers out onto the skin tone a little bit more instead of looking a little bit patchy there. You can also, if you like, remove any little bumps or any glitter that might have fallen out from the eyeshadow or anything like that. You can go to the background layer that we duplicated here, and you can grab the healing tools, which is what I would usually do first. So in this case, I'm just getting the spot healing brush tool for any little specks. This is great. And we're just gonna move over some of the specks that are maybe a little bit distracting or not meant to be there. And any little bumps, blemishes on the makeup. Great, so that is pretty much done. We're going to go continue with burning now and just getting those last few little patches a bit more even. And then we're going to get the dodge tool. And I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm just going to feather it out a little bit more at the corner here so it's not very defined or patchy on those little dark bits. We can sort of feather them out a little bit more. And we'll just dodge in these parts here that sort of make that transition from the highlight on the lid. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a before and after of that now. So I'm going to go back to the history tab and click on the camera. And we're going to go back to the original. So that's the original, and you can see by going back to what we've done now, that's made a huge improvement with just evening out any rough texture or any little bumps, any areas where the makeup tended to be a little bit thinner or finer on the face. So we're just kind of like filling that in and making it look a little bit more even. And we're going to move on to the next step now, which is color. So color can really be merged into with texture in terms of what you're using, and it's very dependent on the image that you have and whether it needs that texture added in. So we just want to make sure that we are not making this area too smooth and that we are retaining the texture. So this next technique with color that I'm going to show you guys can tend to make it quite soft. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill in some of the patches here with the clone tool. And just on the background copy layer, we're going to use this. So we're going to go to the clone tool over on the side here. Make it a little bit bigger. You can keep it quite soft. And the opacity can be maybe around 74% to start off with. The flow can be a little bit higher. I'm going to keep that at 100 actually. And then I'm going to hold down Alt and start selecting areas where there's a little bit more texture to fill in these areas. So maybe around here. And just start kind of filling in those areas just that little bit more. You can maybe put the opacity a little bit down if it's a bit too heavy, so maybe around 48, 50%. And we're just adding a slight amount more texture in. And just continuing on with filling in those patches where there might need to be a little bit more texture in those areas. Okay, so once you've done a little bit of clone stamping and you've managed to fill in some areas with a bit more texture, sometimes, like I said, I sometimes do color before I do texture, or I'll focus on the texture category before I'll try and look at the coloring of the makeup. But usually what I like to do for color is to create a new layer on the side here. And we're just looking at a blank layer here, and we're going to get the paintbrush tool. I usually like to set my flow to 1%, opacity to 100, and just have a pretty soft brush on at this stage. Probably, yeah, hardness around 50% is fine. And then we're going to get the eyedropper tool, and we're actually going to get it from around this area where the color is most potent and where it should be spread to around this area, because this is looking quite orange and quite blending into the skin tone a little bit too much. So we want to make sure that this color is sort of transferring over into this area too. And I like to make this brush a little bit bigger. And then start painting over that area where we want it to be a little bit more vivid. So just making sure it's quite soft at the edges though, because we don't want it to be too intense. And then dragging it a little bit more underneath the eye to make sure that we're getting the color underneath as well. And a little bit more color in these areas too, just to fill in those kind of patchier, darker areas. Okay, so now we've got that selected, we can go to the blending modes here and set the blending mode to color. So it's not going to get rid of any of the texture that we've just added. If I didn't choose color and we go back to normal, that's looking very soft and it's looking like there's not much texture. But we're going to make sure the blending mode is on color so we do have a bit of that texture showing through. Now once you've done this, you can go back to the dodge and burn layer and even out any little parts that still need a little bit more evening out. So in this case, I would go back to the dodge layer, make sure my brush is set to white, and then start painting on the light a little bit more, just in those little dark lined areas where we just added some of the texture. We're just going to even that out a little bit more. And make sure that is all good. So I'm going to show you guys what that color layer has done as well from before. So we're going to turn that on and off. And you can see it's more vivid, but we're not going to overboard there, especially because we don't want to make it too vivid, otherwise it's going to look a little bit funny. So I'm going to show you guys a before and after now, a full before and after of what it looks like once we've focused on dodging and burning, and then the color layer, and then also altering the texture with the clone tool. So let's go back to the original. That's the original, and that's what we've edited it to. So I'm going to zoom out as well. So you can see there's a lot more evenness there, but we've still got a bit of texture. Going back to the beginning, which is that, and then that is what we're looking at once it's done. So if I'm being honest, there's probably a few more little things that I would do in terms of making sure that it's a bit more even with the dodge and burn tool. I'd probably burn in some of these little patches here just a little bit more, just to deepen the color a bit, and the lighting as well. But we don't want to edit it too much because, like I said, it doesn't take much to start going overboard with it. So we just want to make sure it looks fairly even, but still with a bit of texture. So I'll do a full before and after again. And that's the before. This is the after. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. I haven't edited the rest of this image as I've already done a lot of different images recently that have really focused on skin tones and skin editing. So it does look a little bit funny even though we've just got the eye edited on this one, but I hope you guys did follow that tutorial very well and I hope it was helpful for you. I will be doing another tutorial on the eyelashes and eyebrow and how to also edit lips, particularly once makeup has been applied to lips too. So there's lots of different makeup looks out there obviously, and I think that maybe I might do a tutorial on glitter eye makeup as well, because glitter's a little bit different. There is a lot of clone stamping involved and you can't really necessarily focus on too much dodging and burning with it. So I might actually do a tutorial on that because it is a little bit different, but let me know what you guys thought of this tutorial and if it was helpful for you. I hope that it gave you a little bit of insight on how to edit makeup a little bit more in depth. And let me know what else you guys want to see on my channel because I'm always excited to hear your requests. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
Maybe this got way too heavy. I wasn't ready for that.